whatever, huh? Pull up my doc here.
This is the last one.
Were you guys just like me where this is absolutely the last thing for the semester or no?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I have one final, but it's only like multiple choice. And then I have, I think, one more paper to write, and then I'll be done.
Oh, you still have some?
Yeah, I was traveling this week, so didn't really have time.
Man, I'm glad I wasn't because I was traveling last week and I forgot about one assignment. Like I was visiting with my brother and his wife, and so I just like it was like 2:00 in the morning, and we went to bed. I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot. Oh well. Anyway.
Oh, that's all right. It's finals week. We've got this. So close.
Yeah.
The professor for my finance class, like I didn't even know that we'd have a short week, and then everything was due by Wednesday. So oh well.
That's nice.
It's nice, except it was a pain the last couple days. But. Are you done, Lizzie?
I just have one more thing to do.
One more?
Yeah.
And then you'll be graduated, right?
Yes.
Are you walking?
Yeah. It'll be good.
Are you walking?
I walked in December.
Oh, you did?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
You walked prior to graduating? How come?
Because I only had 2 classes left, and so I did these last 2 classes here at home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to go walk, but it's far, and I decided I'd rather spend the money on something else. So, dang it.
That's all right. I could have walked, but these past few weeks have been crazy, so I'm not going to, even though I'm here in Rexburg. So
Really?
yeah. That's okay though.
Was it fun? Are you glad you did it, Lizzie?
Yeah, it was a good experience.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to do it. It's been a lot of work, man. I thought we had to celebrate somehow.
Yeah.
But anyway. Well, you guys ready to do this thing?
Yep, let's do it.
So. I hope I did it right. I've did all the bullet points and stuff. I hope it's done right. We'll see.
Work turned in, right? So
yeah.
Yeah.
It's done.
All right. So for the sake of our professor, I'm Lizzie, and there's Sheena and Jody as well.
Yep, I'm Jody.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm Sheena.
Awesome. I guess we'll just go through the questions.
Yeah, she didn't really give us too much instructions, did she? As far as how to, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, what doctrine in Wilbur's heart drove him to advocate? Why is the doctrine of the family so important to have in your heart to be passionate and persistent?
So do we each just address our answers? Is that what we do?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Let's just kind of say what we have here, and then if it turns into like a discussion or something, we'll just roll with it.
Okay.
I like that. Okay. So the first thought that I had was that he had a belief in the value of life and treating life with respect. And I got that from the first 5 minutes of the movie when he stopped the coach to help the horse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to have the doctrine in your heart, because if you don't have it in your heart, then once opposition hits, it's probably really easy to lose persistence and passion in things.
Let's see. So I've had similar answers to that. I put that he strongly believed that each life genuinely mattered. He had that religious background and he was passionate about it. He had a good group of friends that he supported and who supported him. He was aware that the people he was fighting for and what he was fighting for, all those people had families of their own. And one of the, I don't know if this really counts as a doctrine, but it seemed like he really knew that hard things weren't achieved by trying once and giving up, kind of like what Lizzie said. He knew that he'd have to keep trying and failing until things started happening in the right direction. And at the end of the movie, this was kind of proven because he kept campaigning until the day he died. I think that was in one of the concluding statements of the movie. That was my answer for that question.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, guys, my father-in-law is freaking out. I'm trying to get my husband to go take care of him. So,
okay.
Your dad is yelling, help, 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 help. And
Did you really like the movie?
I did. I had a hard time following it for a while because I couldn't get it to work. And then when I finally got it to work, it was past my bedtime the night before I had, the night I had to get it done. So I was so tired. So after I watched it, I went through online and read kind of a summary, and it made things click a little better.
Mm-hmm. I'd seen the video before, and that's one of my favorite movies. I love it.
So good. It's so good.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So I loved what I apologize for that. My father-in-law's an invalid, and I don't know if he's fallen in there or what, but he's freaking out. So,
that's okay.
Anyway, I agreed with you. I mean, I heard Lizzie just about that whole scene in the beginning was just really illustrative, plus all the things he did with the animals in his house and feeding the beggars but I'm sorry, Sheena, I did not. I'm assuming that you guys talked about his that he gained a deep religious conviction and believed in the doctrine of Christ, and he'd found God, and I think that that's what changed him and gave him the strength to do things that he had never before considered that he would do.
Mm-hmm.
So that he said that he believed that God made men equal. And so he had that doctrine of love. And I apologize if I was repeating what you said. So.
No, I think we all kind of had similar answers for that one. So you're totally fine.
All right. How did Wilbur employ a theoretical Bronfenbrenner approach to become a more effective advocate? Define at least one thing in each system and be specific. Okay. This question was a little bit confusing to me, but for the micro system, I thought that Wilbur and John Newton, the guy that was blind at the end, their relationship with one another is on the micro level, and the way he used it to be a more effective advocate was by gaining insight and support from John in order to go and know what he was fighting for. On the macro level, I had that William Pratt brought all of those clergymen to Wilbur's house, and they all met together, and they learned from one another, and then they formed a group to advocate for changes. And then on the meso system, Wilbur didn't just work with the people that were in the House of Commons, but he also worked with other clergymen and all the other people that came to his little group meeting thing. And that's what I got.
Perfect. This question was hard for me too because all of the different systems, I remember when we had this lesson, I got them kind of mixed up, but I think I did okay on this. I said, for the theoretical approach, he really paid attention to who he was talking to and tailored his message and the way he would communicate it to those people. He planned ahead. He expected everything to take years. He took what he knew about what was going on and made assumptions about what might have been like in other parts of the world that he hadn't seen for himself. For the different systems, the micro system, I said that he used his friend group and political group. The meso system, I said that he met with groups of friends fighting for the same cause so they could find ways to influence the political group. And throughout most of the movie, that political group kept disagreeing with what him and his friends were trying to do. The exosystem was he didn't always take part in the activities the people who disagreed with him did. I don't know if I watched this scene right, but it was when they were playing cards, he didn't stay for all of it. The macro system, the slavery was a cultural norm, and Wilbur was fighting against it. And the Corona system, as slavery developed and was eventually abolished throughout the story, there was also the change of mind that the characters had, so or the people in the story had. So that's what I have.
Sounds great. Yeah, I think we need to switch up and maybe do like everybody do a bullet point, because otherwise I think we're just gonna like keep repeating each other.
Okay, let's do that.
And I get to be last every time. It's no fun. I mean, I think I said similar things in the microsystem. Just also, I noticed like he even had like supportive employees at his home. I thought that was cute that his, I don't know if it was a butler or whatever, kind of was a support to him and his beliefs. And, you know, William Pitt really ignited with him even the willingness to do what he was going to do. I also mentioned the exosystem and, you know, like-minded people like Thomas Clarkson and Aluda Equano or whatever. And the same thing that you said, just fighting against in that macrosystem, the attitudes and cultures with slavery. And, you know, they had to really work with the materials to publish to influence people's perceptions and their knowledge. And that same thing in the chronological system, that time was really necessary for Britain's culture to accept the idea of abolition. You know, when he tried to do it during the French Revolution, he wasn't successful. He had to wait for the right time. And sometimes timing is everything. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
I forgot about the relationship between him and his butler. I loved that. Like at the beginning when he was laying on the grass and he's like, tired. He's like, it's none of my business, but yeah.
Well, and
I love that.
I put in here, but I didn't just mention it, that also his wife. I mean, definitely his wife in the microsystem. Yeah. If it hadn't been for her, he may not have had the strength to, you know, to keep fighting. And because of her, you know, she kind of gave him that fire again. Just on that line, my daughter was telling me today she watched a documentary about President Nelson, and just talked about how she said, and I don't know if it was in the documentary, that she said that she didn't feel like President Nelson would have lived to be the prophet if it hadn't been for finding his second wife, because he had such a wonderful relationship with his first wife. They talked about how she was going to be a scholarship to Juilliard as a vocalist before she met her husband, and she gave that up for them to support him in his career. And so when they were married and they had all those 9 girls, he supported her in singing with the Tabernacle Choir, like getting 9 girls ready for church by himself every Sunday morning. Anyway, and just, you know, and so I just think, you know, a lot of times those microsystem supports are just so important. You know, President Nelson I remember how revived he was when he was able to find someone again to support him in his work. Challenging, you know. So anyway, sorry, I just thought I'd throw that in there. I can't wait to watch the documentary.
I love that. Yeah, like with what you said about the microsystems, like those are the relationships and like the interactions that we experience the most. So even though they're pretty small, they really influence what happens. Like they really mold who we turn out to be or what we decide to do. We have the most experience with them.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. How did Wilbur and his fellow advocates do and share their research? What evidence did they provide to persuade those opposing or on the fence?
Do we have to start this time? Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
We'll just rotate every time.
Yeah, let's do that.
Thank you. Gina, you want to start?
Oh, I thought you wanted to start. Sorry, it must have cut out for a second. Okay, so I put, one of the big things I noticed was over the course of time that they were putting all this together for their case, they had people who traveled to different places, and they had people from different places, and they gathered personal accounts, they gathered names and everything to support their case. Like they took their time to do that. And it wasn't just something that they used passion for, like only passion. They had it coupled with all that research.
Good point.
Do we want to go through do you want me to go through all the bullet points?
Just each tell a bullet point. Is that what you want to do? Or should we do that? Okay. Yeah. again, that Equano, is that how you say it, who published the account. And so also, Brad, Brad, I kind of need to be quieter. I'll have to go in a different room. So they published the book, and also they gathered like thousands of signatures to provide evidence that this people supported this. So it's another.
My favorite thing that they did was so you know that scene, I don't know if you'll remember it, Sheena, but the scene where they were having all these fancy people on a boat.
Oh, yeah.
They parked it next to the other one. Yeah, so that was one of my favorite scenes, because all throughout their advocacy, they would bring the shackles. He had that box made up that was the 4 by 18 inches or whatever. And so they brought the real stuff up and close to the people so that they couldn't really deny that it was happening. But that's what I liked the best.
Love it.
Yeah, they had the smell with that. That was powerful. Like everyone's reaction, you like, I know it was a movie, but like they just did it so well. And also, along with all their research, they had in their group, they had their lawyer friend. He had a different perspective on everything, and I think that really helped them out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only other thing I had, which one of you guys alluded to, was that John Stevens from the West Indies, who in the final case brought he said pages and pages of firsthand accounts and figures and statistics to back up the claims. So I think with everything that we've talked about, he had a good case.
Yeah. If only we had that today for the family stuff.
Yeah.
If people could see what was really going on, they would be just as moved.
But, just like they said then, though, like John Stevens said, people will feel sorry and they'll have compassion, but nothing will change.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, we kind of have to do this behind their backs to get anything to happen. And I feel like we do have good research to support families. There's a lot. I mean, it's a new thing, the social science and, child development and family. And I think we have the research, but do people really want it?
Right.
Do they want to believe it?
And I think I was reading that we still have, since like gay marriage and stuff is still fairly new, like they still have a while for the research on how it affects the children.
In that aspect, yeah. But as far as like intact families,
yeah,
that kind of stuff, there's a lot of newer research in the last 30 years that support, children's outcomes. But
anyway.
Yeah, and with all the newer stuff, like with gay marriage and all that becoming legal, I think it's going to be harder to show people and get them to pay attention to the importance of the family, because they kind of have all that excitement. It's still wearing down. They're very focused on what's new and interesting, rather than like boring family stuff is how they would see it.
I like this quote that from our unit that kind of went along with this: whether truth emerges from a scientific laboratory or through revelation, all truth emanates from God. All truth is part of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I just like that. We can have statistics, but in the end, just have faith.
Yeah. Just because someone says something's a certain way doesn't make it real.
Well, that one reading that we had where they did that whole thing about how bread causes like death. Remember that research?
Oh, yeah.
We had, I still think about that. That's so funny, how you can take anything. Somebody was telling me some statistics the other day, and I'm like, yeah, and that one thing does not cause the thing that they're trying to say that it does. But it's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. How does the film portray the importance of working together as a group? What has family advocacy group work taught you? Jody?
Can we start with just the first question, because I feel like they're two separate things. I'll tell my first bullet point. I like the powerful scene that you already mentioned with the group of abolitionists meeting with Wilbur to convince him as a group through the power of their collective experiences that he could do the work of a politician and also the work of God at the same time. And I feel like, one-on-one that might not have worked with all of them together, and showing firsthand things, that was really powerful.
Yeah, and they each had, like, you just reminded me. I feel like several instances in the movie, they each, like, someone in the group had a connection that they needed in order to get something done.
It's true.
So that was important. That's what I thought of just barely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not just what you know, it's also who you know.
Which is definitely how things work here in our government too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole thing with the neutral flag bill, you know, through the James Stevens, that never would have happened if they hadn't been collaborating as a group. So.
But for one that I wrote, my favorite scene, one of my favorite scenes, was when Wilbur meets his wife, and basically it shows like he's very depressed and kind of hopeless. But then, like you were saying, Jody, like she just kind of shows him that it's not over, and then he gets excited and gets back in it. So I think that that's one of the ways that it showed the importance of working together.
Good. Small group, but a powerful group.
Yeah, and for this one, I kind of had the same answer for the previous question. Like in the group, they had people who had different insights and different ideas. And I really thought it was interesting how the lawyer friend came up with the idea of almost cheating to get things to work. Like no one else would have thought of that. He had a different background, a different perspective. And it was interesting because working together as a group, it's a lot like a family because each person has something to offer. And with more minds and more perspectives, you're able to get further and sometimes a lot quicker too.
Yeah, the other thing I mentioned was just the William Pitt, the prime minister. It was really interesting how they were working together, but they had completely different roles. So I think with you talking about the family, sometimes that is the way it is in a family. You might have, or in an organization, you know, you have completely different roles, but your goal is getting the same place. So William had to act the role as the prime minister, but in that situation, you know, where they had the neutral flag thing, he was the one to go and get the really boring you know, politician to get up and do that because they couldn't do that. And so we have different responsibilities, the different talents and gifts to give. And I think that showed that really well between William but they were both Williams, between the two Williams.
That was the one played by Benedict Cumberbatch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't good at keeping up with the names, but I knew the actors' names, so
yeah, I had to Google
that was helpful.
What their names were after.
I did too. I just stopped it in the playlist at the end and wrote down the names. So anyway.
So Jody, you said you had thoughts on what has family advocacy group work taught you?
Well, I think the group work with us working together, I think it's been interesting, like with having a Canadian in our group. I think that made me more aware of, like, you know, I tend to come at everything from a United States perspective. And so I think that was helpful. Hey, you know, like not everybody in the church sees things from a United States perspective. And, you know, our church leaders, a lot of times we think, why are they doing that? Well, they have to come at everything from a global perspective and something that will benefit everyone. I think sometimes that probably makes it difficult for them, but other times you have to really get down to what's important because it has to be the bare thing that's important. And so I think the group work, you know, with Allison in our group, that was helpful to teach me that.
Yeah, that makes me think of, so this past weekend we had Elder Satati of the Quorum of the 70 here at my house, and he was saying that over in Kenya and other parts of Africa where he's from, like Mormonism is completely different here in America, because like we have doctrine and like there's like that core doctrine and what's important, but then there's a ton of American Mormon culture on the outside of it, and we tend to think that's doctrine too. And he was just saying that you don't see any of that in Africa, so it's like completely different. But like that must be kind of how it is with other political issues too, is they look different in other countries as well.
Cool. So why was he at your house?
My dad had a stake conference, so they always kind of invite him over.
Nice. Is your dad the stake president?
Yeah.
Cool.
That's interesting. I had a class where we talked about how it actually is kind of hard to be a Mormon like you're supposed to be in the culture that the US has, especially with things like people thinking certain callings are better than other ones, like that sort of thing. It's really interesting how like we're so used to it from a US perspective, but there's the rest of the world and they're bigger than we are. So it's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I thought was interesting was just the prevalence of contrary lifestyles, as we talk together in a group. And again, Allison, she's got the cousin who is, and Macy had the cousin who, was trans or gay, and Allison had a lot of friends. And so that really made it kind of hit home. Like, this is just something that's way out there. Like, this is something that people are dealing with all the time within their close family relationships. And so I think that was helpful too.
Right. So what parallels do you see between Wilbur and Captain Moroni in Alma 46? What is a Christian and professional family advocate, and how did Wilbur exemplify that? How can you be effective and Christ-like against such loud and often degrading voices?
So
that was a lot of questions.
Can we just do the parallels first?
Yes.
Sheena, are you up?
I think I am. So with the first two questions, they kind of mushed together. The last one was a little bit separate. But the first two, Wilbur was extremely persistent and he wasn't afraid to speak up in front of others, even when not everyone was actually listening to him. Like when he was in those big meetings, people would shout at him, they would boo at him, and he would continue to talk. And it was very rare that what he was trying to say would actually get through. And he was able to lead and inspire others through how passionate he was, because he had that religious background that kind of pushed him to get to where he was. So he was able to lead people because of that. It came from his very firm belief of what was right and what was wrong.
One of the similarities that I saw was how both Wilbur and Captain Moroni went out and enlisted people, and kind of brought people together. And I kind of saw that big, huge, long petition, 300 name or 3,000 name petition thing, and then that Captain Moroni flag thing, kind of the same, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, let's see. Yeah, that's what my first bullet point is.
Good. I agreed with that. Along with what you were saying with the thing, he was able to ignite passion in other people, which I thought was really illustrated with his wife talking about how as a young girl, she gave up sugar, because she could feel the blood of the slave in every cube of sugar that she ate. And, that comes from some pretty powerful leadership, I think, which Moroni, obviously we think of Moroni as a man of great passion and power because of his ability to ignite. Some other things that I saw was like Moroni prayed mightily to God for the blessings of liberty to rest on his brethren, and Wilbur also, we saw him praying and exercising his faith in God. And so I think they both had that connection.
And with the song too, he sang the song with a lot of passion at the beginning. That was awesome.
That was awesome. Yeah.
How can you be effective and Christ-like against such loud and often degrading voices?
Before we go on to that one, just that part about what is a Christian and a professional family advocate. Mm-hmm. And I just, in looking back in the readings, I just loved some of the quotes by Elder Holland, just, talking about how a Christian is someone who seeks to emulate Christ in their behaviors. I love that they showed that Wilbur tried to do that. And it just reminded me, I was so glad I went back because I got to reread Elder Holland's talk. You never check your religion at the door, not ever. He says that kind of discipleship cannot be, it is not discipleship at all. And then that part where he said, someone has to live his or her religion because otherwise all we get is a bunch of idiots acting like moral pygmies. And I love that. So I feel like, we have to understand, if we're going to really be effective, we have to set an example in our own personal lives, or nobody's going to believe us. We're not going to have the power to accomplish anything. And then also just that a family advocate has to judge. Sometimes we think we have to be tolerant and kind, but Wilbert had to make judgment calls. He had to stand for truth. And in that same talk by Elder Holland, he just talks about this one quote: if we don't take gospel blessings to our communities and our countries, the simple fact of the matter is we will never have enough policemen to enforce moral behavior, even if it were enforceable. And then just talking about how we have to make good judgments in that same talk. So I'm like, I got to go listen to that talk again. It was so good. Anyway.
Yeah, that was such a good one. Yeah, you have to practice what you preach. Otherwise, no one's going to take you seriously.
Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes that can be hard, but because if you're trying to preach something or persuade someone of something, you're going to be on a spotlight, and you're going to be judged too. But you have to make sure you're living up to what you say you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at the same time, we have to not be disagreeable. Like Elder Cook said, it's appropriate to disagree, but it's not appropriate to be disagreeable. So finding that balance, having passion at the same time, not being disagreeable, I find that a really hard tightrope.
I love it.
I had to remember back on who Monica Barlow was, but Monica Barlow spoke.
Is it Monica or Marcia?
Oh, Marcia. I was reading it wrong.
Okay.
Marcia Barlow spoke on persuasive speaking and writing. Did Wilbert and others exemplify any of Marcia's ideas? How so?
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the ways was using, like Sheena was saying, stories that were real life accounts. And I think that was really effective.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think that's the first bullet point I have. I said he was able to bring personal accounts into his cause to persuade others to be as passionate about it as he was. Also, that said that he made sure that he spoke and communicated cohesively and clearly and got people from all areas to join his cause.
Nice. He also told people what their morality produced that was one of her points, was you show what their morality produces. And like in that incident with a horse, I thought it was really interesting. Like he didn't berate the people. He just said, if you give the horse an hour, he might recover. And I liked how he could have condemned the people. He just basically is saying, what if you will be kind, you will have a horse, so he's appealing to their, how it will benefit those men.
Mm-hmm.
And then also when he was appealing to the people in the commons, I feel like he appealed to their core values as well. Like I didn't hear him telling them all that they're going to go to hell and that God said that they had to stop, that overly religious perspective. Instead, he appealed to their sense of compassion and fairness. He showed them the horrible living conditions, the mistreatment of the children in the sugar trade. So he was appealing to their sense of right and wrong and their sense of compassion.
Yeah, I think if this class has taught me one thing, it's how almost useless it is to do the overly religious talking when you're trying to persuade people.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to know who your audience is.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of our other points was using statistics, and he did that. He brought evidence into the courtroom. And what you just said, where you have to find the right place, Sheena, I mean, a lot of times he had to find small settings to try to win people over, visiting, one-on-one with people. So.
Yeah, I have that on mine too. Like he kind of tailored what he said to the people he was talking to. Like he didn't always have long speeches or anything. They were pretty short and simple. He was honest, and like you said, he had evidence for support and to support his case.
Yep.
What role did the government, policy, and religious freedom play in the fight of the slave trade? Did you see their political system being pro-family? Why are we not? Answer all questions. I also thought this was a kind of confusing question.
Yeah, looking at my bullet points now, I'm not quite sure I answered it right. I'm hoping I did, but we'll see.
I'll just start with one point. He had, and this is obvious, he had to act through the political process of his nation, you know, and he chose to do that within the political system rather than what he was encouraged to do is through revolution. So he did it through the government political process of his nation. Thank you very much. You guys have some other points, or?
I do. I'm trying to make sense of mine, though. I think they're okay, because like for mine, it was the government is part of what started the slave trade, and like you said, Wilbur had to navigate through all the policies and everything to help get that taken care of, and then he was able to bring others to join his cause because of his religious beliefs, which is part of the religious freedom aspect of that question. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like the title of the movie, Amazing Grace, that's a song that like it's all throughout the Christian community. Like that's a very well-known song.
And didn't he say his mentor John had written that song?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lizzie. You haven't shared any points yet.
So I basically said what you guys did. I only had like one bullet point for this one because I didn't know. But just that the government, Wilbur and all his people used this government system as a way to affect policies, and they were driven by their religious freedom, basically.
I think it's interesting that because the policy and the way it was, he had to act, and it made his work very time-consuming and very difficult. And I think that was kind of an important point that eventual change can come eventually, but a lot of times it takes a lot more time because you have to deal with the process. Programs.
And that's frustrating. You need someone with a lot of determination to get something done because it takes so long.
Right. Yeah, it's true.
Did you guys think that their political system was pro-family?
I wasn't sure about that one. Like, I think they were pro-family, but not pro-families where each family member is equal all the time. Like, does that make sense? Because I know there was one conversation where they were talking about doing something that meant equal rights for men and women. Because it's different back at that time. I don't remember what scene that was, but it was in there. I
remember which one you're talking about, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was pro-family, but it was a different family setting from what we're used to.
I just say I didn't see the political system being pro-family. That's an interesting point that you had, Sheena, and I do remember that line in the movie. But I saw the legislators being more interested in the business side of the issue, like they were worried about money coming in and out of their country, but I didn't see any discussion about how the slave trade would affect either the families or the slaves themselves or the families of the British people, or how like slave ownership could trickle down into the lives and affect, So to me, I don't know, it seems like that one chapter when we talked about how our policies, are they individual focused or are they family focused? I don't know, maybe you missed it, but I didn't see a lot of family focus.
Yeah, I think I was trying to find family focused stuff and it was hard to find it.
I didn't think they talked about family like at all, but just for the sake of the assignment, I said that they were pro-family because the government and them, they really liked tradition and no revolution, and the anti-family thing today is kind of revolution kind of stuff.
Yeah, like it was a different kind of family.
Compared to us, they were probably pro-family, right? Yeah. Our nation, that's true.
Yeah.
I also just thought about how and I'm sure it was a nature or a result of the communication and transportation issues of the day, but I feel like participating in the British government was probably not very conducive to family life because of the methods of travel and everything. Like they had to leave their families for extended periods of time in order to even be a part of the process. So I feel like they kind of, you know, you saw the men, they're all playing cards all day and they're drinking and they're smoking. Like it feels like it wasn't very family friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, like with the travel and how time consuming it was. I remember at the beginning, there was a person who's kind of, I think it was the girl that Wilbur ended up marrying. People were trying to encourage them to get together. Like that was the pro-family aspect I saw. But like you said, it wasn't really like family. It was like tradition, more like tradition and business.
That's true. They wanted to get married. That was cute.
It was cute, but it was like 2 seconds. It wasn't really.
They worked hard. They got them together. It was awesome. Saved his life, basically.
Yeah. Do you feel that Wilbur used his time on Earth well? How did you see him showing the elements of consecration that Elder Christofferson spoke of?
I'll answer this one first. Yes, yes, and 1,000 times yes.
Yep.
I wish that I could think that I accomplished even a minutia of what he accomplished in his lifetime. Like, he was relentless.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
He was not going to budge.
Amazing. Great cost, too. At great cost.
Yep. His health was definitely affected by it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked that one scene that we talked about already where he was sitting in the grass and he was telling his butler that he had several engagements that day, but the only thing he felt like doing was praying to God and being grateful. And I thought that was awesome.
It was awesome.
That was so cool. And he was also so selfless throughout the whole thing. I mean, he was very much encouraging his butler and all of his servants to feed the people who needed food. And he fought his entire life for a good cause, and he took a lot of risks. And like you said, his health it got bad. He looked so tired. And he's very passionate about it.
Yeah.
He let things that didn't seem right make him uncomfortable. Like he was okay with it making him uncomfortable because it kind of fueled his passion.
Yeah.
I feel like he's a man like George Washington, Lincoln, the prophets who were like chosen by God for the particular work at that time that was needed. Mm-hmm. I love that comment. I don't know if I'm going to remember it exactly where that James Stevens was talking about how was it in India or Indonesia or Jamaica, where was the sugar workers who said that King Wilberforce was coming. I just started crying when I heard that. I was like, that is so awesome that they had so much faith in him. Mm-hmm. And needed him so badly.
That is cool.
He was truly chosen for that work at that time.
Mm-hmm. What other profound, I don't know if profound is the right word, what other profound thoughts or personal insights from the movie that are related to child and family advocacy? Let's see.
Did we do the elements of consecration?
Oh, nope.
How did you see him showing the elements of consecration that Elder Christofferson spoke of?
I think I put the whole he was selfless part for that question. I don't know if I really answered that part of that question.
Yeah.
I had to look at the talk.
Let's see. I put that he also considered the advice of his peers and his servants to be of value. It wasn't just like the people he worked with. He really valued the input of everyone who cared about the things he cared about. I don't know if that really ties into the elements of consecration, because I think I went back and looked up the talk, but I didn't read it through all the way.
It was the elements that he talked about was purity, work, respect for one's physical body, service, integrity. And so he just, he definitely had the purity. Like it talked about him seeking to do God's will, giving up, things that he previously had engaged in, and then just work. Obviously, we talked about that. He just worked relentlessly. And that respect for one's physical body, I just thought, you know, he respected the bodies and the lives of other people that he felt were just as worthy of life and liberty as anybody else. And obviously service and integrity. I mean, I just felt like he did a good job of all those things.
I remember the one scene where he was so bothered by the fact that he was living such a good life when there were people who had terrible living conditions. Like when he was talking about the slaves and everything, he was just so bothered by how nice his house was compared to what they were going through, what him and his peers, what kind of lives they had compared to what other people had. Like he didn't think it was fair.
Yeah, that service, that integrity. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I loved a quote from Elder Christofferson. He said, "Your inheritance is time. It is capital far more precious than any lands or stock or houses you will ever get. Spend it foolishly and you will bankrupt yourselves and cheapen the inheritance of those that follow you. Invest it wisely and you will bless generations to come."
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that talk was, it was so fun to go and hear all the, you know, the stuff that we learned through the semester. It was also good.
I wish this next question was the last question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can we skip it?
Yeah, let's skip it.
Okay, well, we can come back.
What was your understanding of the doctrine of the family at the beginning of the semester, and how has it changed? I didn't really like this question just because I feel like at the beginning of the semester I still had the same understanding of the doctrine, but I think my understanding of advocacy has changed, because I remember starting the class and having to do some assignment where we typed out what we thought this class was about. And I remember typing that I thought this class was a social work class on how to advocate for children and families in court.
Me too.
So I was relieved when it wasn't. But that's really the only thing that's changed, because I feel like I had a pretty good grasp on the doctrine.
Yeah, I think I put like, I knew that family was important at the beginning of the semester, but I really liked learning about how communities play a part in how families turn out. And I really didn't think about how involved or not involved the government can be when it comes to families. I really liked when we learned about different organizations that help advocate for children and families. I didn't realize how frustrating, like there are a lot of injustices in the world, and it's really frustrating, like how they can just be right next door. It's not like just on a huge scale, it's everywhere. And like I didn't really think about how resilient people can actually be. Like they're more resilient than we give them credit for. And sharing feel-good thoughts doesn't mean anything unless someone else actually takes it to heart. Those are the things that like I gave a lot more thought to throughout the semester than I had before.
Sure. Yeah, I think I felt a lot about what Lizzie said, is that I felt like I knew the doctrine. I mean, we memorized the proclamation over the years lots of times, had all my kids do it. We'd say it every morning with scripture study. We'd say a paragraph, you know, for a whole month, and then the next month. So I feel like I knew that doctrine, like I have that in my heart, in my mind. But what has changed is that I've learned that I have a responsibility not just to know the doctrine for myself, but I have the responsibility to put that knowledge to work in my extended family, in the community, in the nation, and that I also have responsibility to protect my family from all of the threats that threaten to destroy faith, family, and freedom, which I knew that the threats were out there, but this class, man, talk about hit you over the head with the threats. You know, I mean, like, I am more aware than I ever was. And so I feel like, you know, that's, you know, like that what has changed is that I'm so much more aware of these powerful movements on the international level, on the national level, with anti-family agendas, and they're real. So anyway, we're losing our freedoms and our moral base, and there's a lot of work to be done. I'm not sure quite how I'm going to do that, but anyway.
This class is a good start.
Yeah. I love this quote by Elder Oaks. In contrast to the institutions of the world which teach us to know something, The gospel of Jesus Christ challenges us to become something. So
That's a good
I love
quote.
that.
yeah, from President Oaks, Elder Oaks.
So how does your family, future or current, benefit from us taking this class?
Let's see. One was I want to pay more attention to the families in my community when I start having kids of my own. Because I want to get more involved in that, because I never thought about the community aspect of child and family advocacy, because they play a big part in it. It starts from the home, but the community is big.
I think one of the ways that they will benefit in the future is this class has helped me to see more of the importance of not being ignorant to the issues that are current, because a lot of times I really just don't care what's happening in politics, but it is important to know and at least have a general idea, because knowledge is power.
Yeah, this last week, when all the thing with Planned Parenthood and the videos that they recorded of the medical directors and stuff, when that all came out like 2 years ago, I'm just so into my school and everything. Like, I didn't really pay attention. I mean, I thought it was awful, but I didn't watch any of them. Well, last week, something in the class kind of led me to watching some videos, and I watched the videos of them interviewing the undercover camera of the medical director of Planned Parenthood. Have you guys seen any of those? I mean,
haven't.
It is, and I thought, and I asked my daughter-in-law, she goes, yeah, it just upsets me too much. And I'm like, but the thing is, if we all knew enough to watch that, wouldn't we want to do something about it? Like, it's awful. It's like, they know what they're doing. They're not even taking care of the women who are going in for the abortions in the medically healthiest way. It's all about getting fetal baby parts, and anyway, it's just awful. And so I thought, it's hard to watch, but sometimes when we try not to watch too much, then we don't have the passion because we really don't know what's going on. And so I feel like what you're saying, Lizzie, it's important. It's like, how are we ever going to be motivated to do something about the things that are going on if we really don't even know what's going on, really, Yeah,
more and more you realize just how much ignorance is Satan's tool.
Right.
And he's doing a really good job of it these days.
Yeah, because I think the good people, they say, oh, I don't want to touch the evil. I don't want to mess up my head with that. I don't want to bring that into my life. But then we don't get passionate. We don't move to do anything. Because anyway, and I just, oh man, seeing that. And you guys have seen the walkouts that they've done regarding the shootings.
Mm-hmm.
Just yesterday, a teacher in California had taught her students, like, we're talking about 17 kids that were killed. Every year in America, hundreds of thousands of babies are killed. Why don't we have a walkout for that? And so a student decided that he would do that. And so yesterday, there was over 200 schools that were doing a walkout. And it was also a test to see if the schools would allow them the same opportunity to exercise their voice as those who were walking out against guns. Anyway, and so I didn't get to hear, I don't watch TV. I don't watch TV. I don't have time. But anyway, I was wondering if anybody covered that in the media at all. But I thought, what a great thing. I wish more people had done that, especially after watching the horribleness of what goes on with babies that are clearly have feelings and are alive. That just breaks my heart, But anyway.
Yeah, I haven't heard of those walkouts, but I live in liberal Oregon, so I probably never will.
Exactly.
I hadn't heard about those either. That's amazing. Along with that, I think it's so important to teach people to get involved, and voting makes a big difference because fewer and fewer people are voting now if they don't get as involved.
Right. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
Right, I'm trying to decide on which bullet point to share for the personal insights one.
Let me, there was a couple things with this one, with the thoughts about this. Obviously, I've already raised my kids. My youngest one is at BYU right now. But I'm sure you guys, I mean, like for your posts and stuff, have you guys had like feedback? Like I was excited that when I posted Julie Beck's talks quote from Mothers Who Know, that I got a post back from a new daughter-in-law. And she's like, wow, that's a great quote. I've never heard this before. And where did this quote come from? And it just made me realize like these great, like that was like a kind of like a landmark talk. And yet because it was 10 years ago, I mean, she was probably 12, she could care less at the time. And so I feel like I'm hoping that things like that will have an influence, and just like different conversations that I've had with my daughters, about like, well, when Macy shared with us about the cyber lady, and just telling them different ways to protect their kids from pornography. And then just, I feel like made me a lot more aware, this class, of like the prevalence of talking kind of down children, how hard it is, how I don't want to have any, how I'm so done, within my church community, that I feel like any chance I can to just talk about the joy of having a family and the joy of having children, because that kind of is like catching, and people start thinking, oh, this is trouble. I don't know if this is worth it. You know what I mean? And so I feel like that's ways that I hope it will filter down. Mm-hmm. Choose to, enjoy having a family.
But. Yeah, I think another thing this class has taught is like the importance of advocating for something rather than against things. Definitely more powerful.
It's true. That's right. That was our big butterfly dragonfly thing, right?
Yeah. One of the bullet points I had was that sometimes there are going to be those who aren't able to be heard, and they need someone to help fight for them, kind of like children who might be abused, or families who are having a really hard time. Like they can't always fight on their own, and that's why advocacy is so important, because they need someone to help make their voices louder. They need someone to help them be heard so something can be done.
True. Very true.
So from the movie, one personal insight that I had, I don't know if you call it a personal insight, one thing that I noticed was when he was singing his Amazing Grace song to the group of men for the first time, and they were all yelling at him, but then gradually they all become silent, and then they listen to the song. And I think that this is kind of like advocating for the family, because there's a lot of uproar right now, but there will be coming a time when they will see the truth, and they'll see the beauty in our message, and they'll listen, and it'll be awesome.
That's pretty profound. You almost made me cry. It's beautiful. I love it. It's true. You just got to keep singing, right?
Yes.
Just keep singing. Just keep singing.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love music, so that hit me.
That was such a good one. I can't top that one. That was a really good one. I put that like to back up your point of view on something that really matters. You need both passion and evidence, because in the movie, Wilbur and his group, they traveled all over for nearly a year just collecting evidence to support their case, and without that structure, it's hard to convince others of what you're trying to show them, and it's hard to even get them to listen. But like with what Lizzie said, you need that persistence too. You can't just throw it out there when everyone's yelling. You have to keep throwing it out there until they quiet down. So that was one I had.
I feel like without evidence, sometimes people, they hear your message, but they just toss it aside because you're not really backing yourself up. I remember I was telling my son about whole wheat flour. This is a silly example, but whole wheat flour. And he goes, and I said, well, yeah, like the store-bought flour has lost a lot of its nutrients, but I grind my own flour because, and he goes like, how do you know? How do you know that? This is like my married son. I'm like, I have spent like 30 years like studying like grains and things like that. I mean, because it's like So it's just my mom. It's just some she throws out there. Like, she didn't really know what she's talking about. Anyway, people want to know, like, what's your source? You know, why are you saying this, and how do you know this? So I think that's a great point. So, as far as from the movie, I really loved the quote from the movie by William Pitt when he said, and I've got some things that are popping up that are blocking my thing here. He said, surely the principles of Christianity lead to action as well as meditation. Mm-hmm. And I really loved that. And then this one by the priest John Wilber, you have the work to do. And he just said, just do it, get to work. And I just feel like Wilber set such a great example of working hard to change the world. And I felt really inadequate, kind of I mentioned before, to, you know, that I'm really not doing anything with my life or really accomplishing for the greater good. But I also took comfort in this quote by Wilber from the movie. He said, every day we change things by degrees. And so, you know, I'm sure there's not going to be a movie made about me, you know, but maybe I can change things by degrees in my home or in my ward or in my community. And, you know, Wilber believed that God sent him with two great objectives, and that was to reclaim the slaves, and the second was to reform his society. And I feel like we all have been sent to the earth by God for a purpose, and he wants us to accomplish great things. And even though I don't have a great work, probably like Wilber's work, I still have work to do. And I hope that somehow in my remaining time on earth, I can change things, even if it's just by degrees. I think as we stand in the place, I think that was a quote from conference. That was one that my daughter loved the most, was because she's a mother of 3 young boys, and it's hard. You know, they're little and it's a lot of work. Her oldest has Down syndrome, and he's 4, and then she has a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. Anyway, and she just took from conference, you know, stand in the place that you've been given. And I think that's what we all kind of have to do is, you know, it's not all the same work, but it's still all important. So, yeah.
Amen to that.
Good conclusion.
Yeah. Well, it was really fun, guys. It was so fun to get to see you and meet you and talk with you.
Yeah, good luck with being done with school, everybody. Woohoo, we did it.
This weekend will be our best weekend in a long time.
Yeah, this is the conclusion. Yeah, and good luck finishing up with your stuff, Sheena. And your marriage, right? Because you're a newlywed, right?
Kind of. 2 years, so.
2 years?
I'm new. I'm new, not in Rexburg, but yeah.
Okay. And good luck with your stuff going on and your relationships, Lizzie.
Yep, thanks. All right, I'll post the video and see y'all in the future.
Yeah, don't forget the evaluations.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good point. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
All right. See y'all.